Hi, and welcome back to Tea Talks with OnLadder. My name is Cam Rorka. I'm the CEO and co-founder of OnLadder. Typically, as part of this interview series, we've talked to industry leaders to get their take on some of the hot topics of the day. But now, for this one, we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We want to talk to some of the new up-and-coming players within the mortgage industry, those that are bringing innovative new products to market in order to help make the process and ultimately customer journeys better. So today we're talking to Joy Abisaab of Mast. They provide a cloud-native origination platform for mortgage lenders, so they can focus on what's most important to them. And with that, Joy, good to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks for the invite, Cam.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, I guess just to kick things off, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself? What's your background? Where how you found yourself in the mortgage industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Joy. So my background is financial services. So I spent over a decade on capital markets, actually. So I started my career on what used to be the risk arbitrage prop trading desk of SocGen in New York. That spun out in a hedge fund. I spent around a decade with the firm. When I left, I was trading globally out of London. Basically, I was trading equities and derivatives. The hedge fund became one of the large activist investors in Europe. Through that lens, I had extensive experience in actually creating programs and algorithms on the trading side of things and capital markets, which sparked me a bit some of the tech savviness that I have before I co-founded Mast. And I started Mast over 2 years ago with two of my co-founders, Rob and Henry, and basically when we started tackling the problem, one of the big areas we wanted to solve is how to bring transparency, speed, and clarity to the borrower. Today it takes 50, 60, 70, even more, 80 days to get a decision on mortgage application. There's no reason for that in 2022. There's a lot of basically steps throughout the journeys where communication breaks, legacy technology holds everyone back, and we're trying to solve some part of it.
Could you just elaborate on the problem you're trying to solve? And then, how has Mast decided really to take that on?
Yeah, absolutely. So we started with the problem first. When we looked at the industry, we're a bit, between me and my co-founders, the three of us, we think we have, which we would like to call an unfair advantage, meaning that most of us were outsiders and we had an insider actually keeping us in check. And if you look at most of the industries where you had real transformation, it was always the case. It was never an established player coming in and changing things or making it better. You needed a fresh perspective. So we had this right balance between Rob, Henry, and myself. And when we looked at the problem, we focused on the problem and we didn't focus on the solution. We said, okay, how do we fix the speed of getting you as a borrower a mortgage faster? And we started looking at the whole journey and the whole chain of events. And we realized that the biggest bottleneck is actually lender technology. So when we set up to build Mast, we never said, oh, let's build banking software, or let's build a software to sell to banks, which is actually harder than going to the consumer directly. We thought that the only way to really solve the problem is to give them really new, solid, flexible technology so that they can do everything else much faster. And when we unlock this, we could theoretically, unlock a lot of things in the industry and bring new products to the consumer, enable new product innovation, such as your product to lenders, etc. And also, be a lot more clear with the borrower and get their mortgage much faster in their hands.
No, that's something that we found when we were building OnLadder as well. Sam and I my co-founder and I, we come from a non-mortgage lending background. But what we did was just start from from the foundational pieces and just start bringing in people alongside us that have all of that that experience that you really need for this. Yes, you need a fresh perspective, but you need to balance things out.
Exactly.
100%. But I guess actually going into your co-founders, how did you end up meeting them? How did you guys come together to start Mast?
Yeah, so the three of us met at a startup incubator accelerator called Antler, and we actually decided to start working on this. When we met, we knew we wanted to work together, the three of us, and the first problem we decided to tackle was the mortgage problem. mainly because Rob came from Barclays, seeing a lot of problems there. I come from capital markets. I understood what technology can do to certain things, and then Henry comes from, used to work at Thought Machine, has a lot of experience building cloud native, core banking, etc. And it made a lot of sense that there was founder market fit where you had someone focusing on product, someone focusing on business, and someone focusing on the engineering. And we had everything together to start working on that. The more we went down the rabbit hole, the more it made sense. And so we started working together in February 2020. And then we officially registered MAD as a company in June 2020. And this is where we really started kicking things on.
You've really gotten started. You've got some serious traction. You've got some initial clients on board. But I guess, what was the biggest barrier to getting those initial customers for you? Because your customers are mortgage lenders, so they're not just gonna go like, that looks interesting, we should do that. There's more of a process. There's a lot of de-risking that needs to happen on their end. So how did you get started with the initial customers, and what do you think was like one of the things, or maybe a couple of things that really helped you get over that first hurdle?
I think one of the most important factor is grit. And I think as a founding team, my partners and I, the three of us, knew it was going to take us time to get started. This type of business, selling to enterprise as a startup is very tough. So when we started, we knew that it's going to take us a long time. So we knew that we're going to have to weather through probably a long desert period before we get somebody in. When we tried fundraising in the first stages, everyone was telling us, "Oh, you'll never sell to a bank. You'll never sell to a bank." And we're like, there's a lot of software companies that sell to banks. Why shouldn't we do it? It's true, it's tougher for a startup. So we didn't really end up raising. Us invested in our company just to get us some runway. And we gave ourselves a deadline saying, okay, if by this date, a year from now, we don't get even a proof of concept signed or a pilot, we'll think about pivoting to something else, another business idea. But maybe I think a month or 2 months just before that deadline, our first lender said, okay, cool, guys, let's go. We'll give it a shot. And it was a bit de-risked for them because they were moving on from paper on a certain division where we're launching the MAS platform. There's actually no technology out there that is flexible enough so that they can use, and that's why they were using paper. So it was really a test for both of us, and it actually worked. So once we went live with them and we started having traction, this is where other investors started realizing, saying, these guys can sell to a bank. And we were 3 at the time in the company. So kudos, to everyone who made it possible, my 2 partners as well. And we end up raising a seed round that we closed in last May, June, which gave us enough runway. But still, we're still early stage. We're still feeling all the resistance in getting more lenders, because one of the biggest challenge for a startup, and that most startups actually don't have, is they start selling to consumers. They can try things. They can justify early traction by having 5, 10, 20 clients using their products. We can't. What we do is what we call material outsourcing for lenders. It means that if a lender, fully regulated entity, wants to use our product, it needs to go to the board. And the board looks at the risk. They only look at the downside. They're saying, okay, great, they're building new technology innovation. We get this. Great. But how do we de-risk that? And us going from 0 to MAST is selling enterprise software to regulated entities. So it means that we need to do a lot of work on our infrastructure. For example, we formally committed in becoming ISO 27001 certified by next September. Hopefully we'll achieve it way sooner because we're in the process now. But all this is sort of stuff that startups do 5-6 years in. They don't do it 2 years in. Mm-hmm. So all this sort of stuff is very challenging for us, and the sales cycle.
Yeah.
The sales cycle, the reality is we sell to banks and lenders that don't have a runway. So they can drag things along for 2 years if they want, because they don't care about basically what's happening outside of their realm. From our perspective, we need to achieve certain metrics within a certain period of time, or else we don't have the traction to either raise funding or get revenue and to move to the next level. So for us, trying to get all this traction in while we're alive and surviving is very important. And this is what makes it very challenging for us, for our business.
No, that's something that we've seen as well. It's just the kind of traction we need to look for is different than, say, someone that's trying to sell a soft drink to consumers. They can create a soft drink and then go out there and test it with like 40 people and go like, does this taste good? Yeah, it kind of tastes good. For us, that's not really that just can't happen. There needs to be a process that you need to go through, because ultimately for us, it's a mortgage lending product. And if we don't do it right, then ultimately it could potentially hurt people. So making sure that we look at it from all different angles, making sure we have all these stakeholders on board before we can start to offer it, that is incredibly important to us, to the customer, to the wider mortgage ecosystem. But anyway, going back, for us, traction looks different, and being able to latch onto that kind of the kind of traction that really matters to us, and then being able to use that to map out like what our milestones really look like. It's more challenging. It makes things more challenging. It slows the process down, and really that makes the grit that you were talking about even more important over time. But yeah, we're talking about traction and getting to market and having customers that you can then work with to iterate the product on your end, and getting past some of these major barriers that you've experienced. But what do you think is the viewpoint that you've brought in order to get you where you are now? Like the unique viewpoint that, say, you and your co-founders have brought that, say, others might not have beforehand.
It's still a bit early to really understand the consequences, but I would say that first, what we're doing is, versus our competitors, I'm going to talk about it like that. We have the chance to actually build our software with direct feedback and iteration loop from our clients. Something I think our competitors didn't do because of the on-prem nature of the software.
Yeah.
They had to build the whole software and go sell it as a full package and saying, this is it. And then you as a lender adapt your processes and your way of doing things to the software we've built. We actually avoided doing that because in extreme programming methodologies and agile, you want to get, a product feature is only good as much as it's used. So you want to make sure that you build a feature with the closest feedback loop that you possibly can with your client. So what we end up doing is we took a chance on the first big tranche that we could build to make sure that somebody's going to use it, the software. And we held back on building the rest because we want to do it with the lender in question, and we're doing it right now. We want to make sure that everything we add is actually the users who are telling us, we actually use the software like that, or we would like to use it like this, but currently, whatever we have, we can't. So we make sure that we incorporate and we add layer after layer. And the fact that we're cloud native and we're building everything like that makes things much easier, because we can roll back to versions before, undo things very quickly, and add things very quickly. And all this is actually really helping us. And the fact that we came in with, actually before starting Mast, we didn't know what other origination systems look like. So we were not clouded by, okay, this is how it should be, or we didn't have some sort of blueprint. We started thinking from scratch, instead of saying, how do we digitize a manual process that lenders do? We said, okay, what's your end goal? And we're thinking about what's technology out there and how we can get there with no legacy mindset. So we're not saying, okay, we should do things like this or like that. We're saying, okay, this technology is available. How can we use it to the maximum potential to get an action done for a lender? So not having this kind of baggage is actually helping us. And from all the demos, the feedback, the conversations we have with lenders, we got a lot of positive response. So we keep on pushing in that direction.
From when we were doing we were doing a demo for your product, Sam and I, we don't have that, that legacy background. So we kind of look at it and it's like, this looks great. Why wouldn't we use this? It became really crystallized for us the value of Mast when we brought in James Bishop and David Swallow, two new hires for us who had come from a mortgage lending background, and they were just kind of blown away by how easy it was to use, and some things, some features on it that they had sought to create themselves when they were at their previous roles, that took them months on end to make. And we're not even just talking about the platform itself. We're just talking about like one little feature associated with it. And they were just like, this is going to save us a tremendous amount of time and process. But yeah, I guess that is definitely, that is the viewpoint. Coming from a different background, a non-mortgage lending background, a non-legacy background, and being able to just start from scratch and not have that in the back of your mind kind of influencing what you're trying to do, really. What mistakes do you think that firms are currently making when it comes to deciding what kind of platform do they want to use, or like what kind of tech stack do they want to use in order for their origination systems? Because there's a lot of different options out there, and each have their pros and cons.
Yeah.
But what do you've probably talked to, what is it, over a dozen, maybe 2,000 mortgage lenders?
Probably
countless. Let's go with countless.
I lost count.
Yeah, but like, what's like a thread that you see amongst all these conversations?
It always goes back to a question of risk. The situation we've seen. So few other companies try doing this over the years. I think our timing is right because COVID kind of changed the perception of technology for all lenders. All lenders faced, the reality that not everyone needs to work from home, and this is not something common in regulated lending world before COVID. So they realized, okay, we need to do something about technology, and now we're at a point where if banks and building societies and lenders don't actually upgrade their technology, it's actually worse. We're arriving to the point where they've been pushing this for 10, 15 years. And now they realize, okay, we need to do something about it. Now, the flip side of this is what we're saying is a lot of the lenders just don't want to take that risk anymore. They don't want to either take the risk for a new participant or they just don't want to change things, because you need to understand the psyche of people taking the decision. Their jobs is on the line. So a decision like this for them can get them out of their position. And we've seen this happening in multiple lenders where they chose one of the legacy providers that promised things and never delivered because they had huge backlogs, etc. So they lost their job because of this. This is why we understand also the importance of us when we sell to lenders or when we talk to them, to give them all the possible scenarios to de-risk our business. So we're at a point now where when a lender talks to us, I can give them a 5-year complete de-risking of if we end up going bust for some sort of reason, how they will still be able to run without any risk. And this is something that changed a bit in the last few years. Now, the other side of things is that as well that because of choosing certain other origination platforms that are not flexible, that doesn't foster any innovation, is they won't be able to create new products, and what we want, for example, is help them connect to guys like you much easier way than the current tech stack out there doesn't really allow it. And we come in with a fresh blank paper saying, okay, in our software we can create any sort of journey, we can facilitate anything to make at the end of the day make it easier for the borrower. And yeah, so for me, it goes back to a question of risk. I don't think the perception of risk is still in the head of managements and in the head of key decision makers within lenders. They want to innovate, but they're being held back in certain legacy thinking, and hopefully we'll help change this over the next few years.
Yeah, it takes time, it takes grit, and all that. But also something interesting I thought you said, you kind of touched upon, was around there's professional risk here.
Yeah.
But what sits behind that is also personal risk.
Correct.
Don't get me wrong. At a certain level, like these guys can find a new job, but it ultimately still disrupts things if they do lose their job. Disrupts things for themselves, for their families. Not having an income, even if it's only for a little while, could be problematic for some. So it's something I guess we have to be mindful of as we kind of progress with this. Yes, it takes forever for these things, but there are real reasons why it does. It's not just arbitrary. We've talked about legacy versus kind of like a new mindset. But for you, for your business, How do you see that evolving? Because we've talked about like what viewpoint you bring, but really, in order for any change to happen, you need the stakeholders, you need your customers in order to
Yeah.
kind of evolve with you over time in some ways. So, what do you think is? How do you think that's gonna that mindset, that new mindset, in their view of tech, and what it really means to them? How do you think that's going to evolve over time? What do you think are some of the things that will need to happen in order for them to change the way they view things?
Absolutely. So, especially in mortgage lending, lenders have always been very skeptical about technology because a lot of deception, misfires, whatever you want to call it. The things that's going to evolve that happen actually in other industries is that technology has always been a cost center. It's going to change. Now they should look at technology as a revenue generating tool. We can't not use technology anymore. I hear lenders saying, oh, I don't like tech, I'm afraid of tech. But I'm like, but you're using a computer and Zoom, right? And you don't think about it. And we want our product to evolve that way so that they realize that it's something that needs to be embraced and no one has a choice. And actually the lenders that are going to do better than anyone else are going to be the most tech savvy in the next 5 to 10 years. There's no doubt about that. Even from the most automated vanilla cases to the most manual underwriting approach, technology is going to be the differentiating factor when it comes to product innovation, when it comes to speed of underwriting, when it comes to probably everything from now on.
Joy, thank you very much for coming by. It was great to hear from you and what you guys are doing at Mask. Good luck, and hope to see you. Hope to see you soon.
Thanks for having me.
Possibly for a pint. All right.
Thanks for having me.
See ya.